Hey everyone, today we are making caramel apple bread pudding. Look at this baby. It is beautiful and it is delicious, and I'm excited to show you how it's done. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do for our caramel apple bread pudding is to make the caramel. Let me show you how. Here are the ingredients that we need. We are going to use 2 cups of sugar, a cup of cream, 2 tablespoons of butter, a tablespoon of vanilla, and some sea salt. The way we're going to get started with this is in our 2 cups of sugar, we're just going to start with a half a cup and we're going to melt it down. We're not using any liquid or fluid in here. And so we're just going to keep stirring our sugar until it gets to be like a golden brown color. And this way, we brown it slightly. It will caramelize, but we don't have to worry about if we add water to it, and sometimes you get those crystals in it. So this is a relatively easy way to make caramel, but full disclosure, I've had some failures, but you do have to be really, really careful. You have to watch it because it can burn on you in an instant. So stick with me here. We're just gonna do a half a cup of sugar at a time. And as this starts to get a golden brown color, then we'll add another half cup and we'll continue the process until we're really like a deep golden color. And I'm just gonna be really watchful and stir it a lot as we go along. It looks like I'm doing a lot of nothing, but trust me, when it does start to melt, we're gonna see it. You can begin to see some of the sugar is making little clumps. That's exactly what we want to happen. Those little clumps are the sugar starting to melt. See how this is getting nice and a light golden color? Don't worry about these clumps because they will melt into the rest of our caramel. So here's another half cup or so. And again, just gonna stir, just keep stirring, otherwise you're gonna have a burned, clumpy mess. And be really careful because caramel is hot, hot, hot. So we don't want any caramel injuries. Get my next. More in. I can only imagine what some of you are thinking right now, like, oh my God, I'm just going to the store and buying some of this, which is perfectly okay. But you should at least try it once. Let's put our last batch of sugar in. And now we're just gonna keep stirring this until it's all nicely melted and a deeper golden color. don't know if there's really any sort of technique to what I'm doing here, but I'm kind of trying to flip the melted sugar on top of the clumpy sugar so that it kind of evenly distributes. And what I'm ultimately trying to do is make sure that this doesn't burn. So I think this is looking like a really good color for us. It's darkened, but it's not too darkened yet. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to lower the heat, and we're going to add our 1 cup of cream. And remember, this is really hot stuff, and sometimes it can bubble up like that. So we definitely want to keep stirring carefully. It's kind of cool looking, actually. We just keep stirring, keep stirring. And once it starts to settle down a little bit, then we'll add our vanilla and our sea salt and our butter. Isn't that, it's already such a pretty color. And so here we're bubbling, which is exactly what we want. I can feel underneath my spatula that the sugar is not all clumped up, that it's combined nicely with the cream. So I'm gonna still keep it on low. Stop for a second. Add my 1 tablespoon of vanilla. Add my 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'm just gonna be careful. And here we have a teaspoon of sea salt, and it goes. And now let's keep stirring. We want our butter to melt in here, and we want to try to stir as much of this foaminess out. You can see it's all kind of settling down, doing its thing. Starting to look like yummy caramel. Okay, turn the heat off. Just keep stirring a little bit more. I can feel just a few like little lumps in here that I'm gonna try to get that all incorporated in. So here you have it, guys. Wonderful salted caramel. That is going to be very yummy for any recipe that you choose. You can bottle it up, you can give it as a gift. You can do a bazillion different things with it. And see, it wasn't really too bad. But I have to say, phew, I'm relieved that it all worked out. So I hope you guys give it a try. I understand if you don't, but I really hope that if you do, you enjoy it. So the next thing we need to do for our caramel apple bread pudding is make the apple filling. And for that, we have 6 apples that have been sliced and cut into reasonable sized pieces. We have 1/3 of a cup of maple syrup, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and 2 tablespoons of butter. So all we're gonna do to get this going is put our apples in the pot. And I do wanna tell you that these apples, I cut them up last night and put them in a solution of 1 tablespoon of honey to a cup of water. Let them soak for 5 minutes, rinsed them off real well, stuck them in a Ziploc bag, and put them in the refrigerator. And I mean, they look like I just prepared them 10 minutes ago. So that is a really good tip. And then here goes our brown sugar to the mix. Our delicious maple syrup goes in, and the 2 tablespoons of butter. Come on, there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to cover this up. We're gonna put it on the burner for about 10 minutes under a low heat. We just wanna get the flavors mixed together and get the apples just a little bit soft. So I'm gonna do that, and then we'll come back and we'll start working on the custard. So while our apples are getting soft, it's time to make our custard. And what we have for our custard is 1 2/3 cups of whole milk, 1 2/3 cups of heavy cream. We have 7 egg yolks, yes, count them 7. We have a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. We have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of cinnamon. Oh, and we can't forget our vanilla, 2 teaspoons of vanilla over there. So all we're gonna do is combine them all together. And let's get our milk and cream in. Sorry about that, guys. I'm so excited for my bread pudding. I'm knocking things around. Here goes our brown sugar, cinnamon, see, salt, and vanilla. And now give it a really good whisk. Want to make sure you break up all of those beautiful egg yolks that we put in there. Smells really good. Okay, I think that's it. We're gonna set it aside, and we're going to now move on to our croissant bread that we're using, and then we're gonna put it all together. So now we get to put it all together. And the first thing we need is as big a bowl as you can possibly find in your house, because what we have over here are 10, yes, count them, 10 croissants that I've chopped up into 1 to 2 inch pieces. So first things first, we're going to take our apple mixture that we softened on the stovetop and just pour that into our big bowl. Ooh, let's get all of these apples because they are delicious and we don't want to miss one of them. And plus I'm building arm strength by doing this. Okay, so our apples are in. To that, we are adding 1 cup of chopped pecans. You can leave them out if you're not a fan, but I think they add a lovely little extra crunch and texture to our bread pudding. So let's just kind of stir that up, get that mixed in. And now to this loveliness, we are going to put all of our croissants in. And I don't know if you're thinking, did she make those croissants? No, I did not. I just purchased them. And honestly, they're best if they're day-old croissants anyway. It helps to absorb the custard that we're going to pour over them. And in fact, I was reading about bread pudding not too long ago, and I learned that the original bread pudding was made so that they weren't wasting the bread, that the bread had, was a day or two old, was going maybe on the stale side, and so they came up with this delicious dessert combination. So I'm really glad someone was resourceful there. So, all right, we just want to get this mixed up, get our croissant pieces with the apples, and there's a little bit of, remember we put maple syrup in with the apples, and so there's a little bit of kind of that appley sweet sauce on the bottom. So I'm just trying to get that evenly distributed here. It's not going to be perfect, but we'll try and do the best we can and see why you need a super big bowl, because if you didn't, I think there'd be bread and apples and a big mess on your counter. And trust me, I've done it. So, okay, that's looking good. I'm just going to clear the decks here a second to make room for our bread pudding in the pan. So let me just move that over a little bit. I am using, this is about a 3/4, just round iron, nice heavy duty enameled baking pan. You can use, if you have a 9x13 square, if you have little ramekins, which I do have, because I do know from past experience that the bread will fill this nicely, but then there's always a little bit extra. So, this is for the baker, right? So let's go ahead and take our bread mixture and fill it up. And you can really, kind of pack it in there. It's quite all right. So I'm just gonna try and get as much of our bread and apple mixture into the pan as possible. Let me just take a little break here and get that nicely patted down here. I think it can maybe hold a little bit more, but there's a runaway. Before I finish filling, I'm gonna put some in my little ramekin, because that's gonna be for me. Just get that in there. I know I'm making a mess, but I'll clean it, you guys. Get that in there, get the rest of this in here. And I know you don't really want to see the back of the bowl, but there we go. Looking good. Okay, we're just kind of compressing our bread in. And my little baby here, get all of this goodness in the ramekin. All right, excellent. Now, to this, let's start with our big one. We are just going to now pour over our custard. And we want that custard to kind of do its thing and mingle with the apples and the bread and get it all nice and custardy. So remember, here's the custard that we made earlier. And it's helpful if you do put it into something that has a pourable spout, because it just makes it so much easier to get our custard in the pan. And you want to fill it, it's quite all right if you see it coming up the sides. That's what you want, because it's going to absorb into the bread, into the croissants, and then when we bake it, it's kind of puff up and they will end up looking fabulous and tasting fabulous. So let me get my little baby. There's my baby, and I'm gonna put the rest of it in here. And while you're doing this, preheat your oven to 300 degrees. And before we put it in the oven, we're just gonna let it sit out here and kind of get the custard to know the bread and the apples a little bit, but only about 5-10 minutes at the most. And then we're going to put it in the oven. We're going to cover it with some foil before we do that. The big guy needs to be in the oven for about 45 minutes. The little guy can be in the oven for 25. Remove the foil and then let it get nice and brown another 10 minutes or so. And we will then show you what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. So here it is, right out of the oven. Look at how nice and brown. If you could smell it, it smells fabulous. The cinnamon, the butter croissants. So to that, to even make it more fabulous, of course, remember we have our caramel sauce. So we're just going to, look at that beautifulness all over the top. Isn't that a pretty sight to behold? And we'll come back, we'll scoop it out, put it on a plate, and give it a taste. So now let's get some of this beautiful bread pudding into our bowl and give it a taste. Just gonna scoop some out. Gonna very carefully move that over. Here we go, you guys. Isn't that pretty? I'm gonna add a little bit more caramel sauce just because, hey, why not? If you had some vanilla ice cream, that would be lovely on top as well, or some whipped cream, or whatever combination of topping your heart desires, I think would be excellent. But let's go in here. I want to get a little bit of that caramel sauce. Oh my gosh, you guys, the contrast of the salted caramel, which is just a little bit of sweet and bitter, with the yummy apples and the croissants in here with the butter and maple syrup. It is delicious. You have got to try this. And I think you will be very pleased. This would be an awesome dish for any fall get-together, really any time of the year, but I think you will love it. Enjoy.